The concept of freedom in contemporary Moroccan thought, a philosophical and political exploration. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Freedom is one of the most significant and complex concepts in political, philosophical, and human thought. It is not merely a slogan, but a multifaceted idea that intersects with various dimensions of individual and collective life: law, history, civilization, and social and political philosophy. The Center for Humanities Studies, MADA, has gathered distinguished scholars to discuss this crucial subject. Today's meeting serves as a platform for critical and informative perspectives on the concept of freedom as seen from different angles. Among our esteemed participants, we welcome Professor Mustafa Incha, an expert in freedom and determinism within the social sciences, and Professor Mohamed Azrahi, a specialist in political philosophy. Additionally, Professor Abdul Wahid Bin Abdelaziz will address the relationship between freedom, the state, and the necessity of education in our society. This discussion is intended to foster a deep intellectual engagement with the concept of freedom, providing insights into its theoretical underpinnings and practical implications in contemporary thought. Freedom in contemporary Moroccan thought. Why focus on freedom? Professor Abdul Wahid Bin Abdelaziz opens the discussion by emphasizing the importance of freedom in contemporary Moroccan thought. 1. Relevance to democratic and human rights discourse. The Center's research revolves around democracy, state governance, and human rights, all of which are deeply connected to the concept of freedom. 2. Understanding our historical condition. Engaging in critical dialogue about freedom helps in comprehending Morocco's historical trajectory and its intellectual evolution. His objective is not to provide rigid conclusions, but to question, analyze, and search for conditions that validate the concept of freedom for the betterment of humanity. He acknowledges that freedom is one of the core themes in contemporary political thought, interconnected with rights such as equality, freedom of expression, and self-determination. The philosophical foundations of freedom. Prominent Western philosophers have shaped the discourse on freedom, each contributing unique perspectives. Jean-Jacques Rousseau advocated for self-determination and the freedom of conscience, establishing the foundation of modern political thought. Baruch Spinoza strongly defended freedom of thought and expression as an inalienable right. Unfortunately, the absence of Professor Slimani, a specialist in Spinoza's philosophy, is felt during the discussion. His insights would have enriched the debate on the historical and philosophical development of freedom. The influence of Western thought on Moroccan intellectuals. Moroccan thinkers have engaged with Western philosophical doctrines in an effort to establish a modern civil state rooted in freedom. This intellectual engagement has led to two significant movements, embodied in the works of Abdullah Al-Aroui, a historian who examined freedom through a historical lens. Mohamed Aziz Al-Hababi, a philosopher who developed a unique multidimensional concept of freedom that diverged from traditional liberal notions. Their approach to freedom differs from Western liberal traditions. Mohamed Aziz Al-Hababi's perspective on freedom. Mohamed Aziz Al-Hababi's conception of freedom is deeply rooted in the idea of liberation rather than mere autonomy. His works, particularly his novel The Generation of Blood, provide critical reflections on Morocco's struggle for independence, democracy, and peace. He presents 7 key arguments in support of his vision of freedom. 1. Freedom as liberation. He views freedom as an act of resistance against external constraints, emphasizing human agency in overcoming oppression. 2. Freedom beyond external constraints. True freedom, according to Al-Hababi, is not just about breaking free from external forces, but also about overcoming internal struggles such as desires and impulses. 3. Multiplicity of freedoms. He argues that freedom must be understood in its plurality, encompassing political, intellectual, and personal dimensions. 4. Freedom in relation to historical conditions. He contrasts his ideas with Henry Bergson's philosophy, suggesting that real freedom must acknowledge the social and historical realities that shape human existence. 5. Freedom and economic independence. Unlike classical liberalism, which links freedom to market dynamics, Al-Hababi emphasizes the need to liberate individuals from colonial and economic exploitation. 6. Critique of pessimism. Drawing from Jankelevich, he challenges the notion that freedom is an unattainable ideal, arguing instead that pessimism can be a tool for social and philosophical transformation. Freedom is not a given. It must be actively pursued and defended on a continuous basis. The historical approach to freedom, Abdullah Al-Aroui. Abdullah Al-Aroui offers a different perspective, viewing freedom as a historical concept rather than a purely philosophical one. He argues that freedom cannot be understood outside the framework of history. Instead of treating freedom as an abstract idea, he asks pragmatic questions. What are the conditions necessary to achieve freedom? What are the subjective and historical limitations that define freedom in a given society? Al-Aroui identifies 4 main interpretations of freedom in Arabic thought. 1. Moral freedom, associated with ethical righteousness and goodness. 2. Legal freedom, defined in opposition to slavery and subjugation. Okay, so 3. Social freedom, it's connected to the protection of the oppressed and the fight against injustice. 4. Mystical freedom, a Sufi perspective that sees freedom as liberation from material attachments, symbolized in the declaration, "I am the truth." These interpretations differ significantly from Western liberal definitions of freedom, which emerged in the 19th century and are primarily linked to economic production and individual autonomy. Conclusion, to be continued. The discussion so far has revealed the complexity of the concept of freedom in Moroccan intellectual thought. While Mohamed Aziz Al-Hababi emphasizes liberation from both external and internal constraints, Abdullah Al-Aroui situates freedom within a historical framework, challenging purely philosophical definitions. As we continue to explore this subject, we will further examine Al-Aroui's evidences for freedom and how his ideas contribute to contemporary debates on political and social emancipation. Stay tuned for the next segment of this in-depth analysis.